Discover the incredible truth. Single black mom behind police slap is an undercover FBI agent. The morning glow cast warm shadows across the diner as Tiffany poured coffee, her hands steady but her heart racing. The routine was disrupted by the shrill ring of her phone. Malik's frantic voice echoed through the receiver. "Mom! Officer Johnson hit me!" Panic thickened in her throat. Memories of her own childhood filled with whispers of injustice flooded back. The officer, known for his heavy-handedness, had crossed a line, but Malik was just 11, too young for this cruel misunderstanding. A wave of desperation surged within her. How could she protect him from a world that had always been unkind? Serving breakfast to a mix of regulars and newfound spectators, Tiffany fought to maintain her composure. The diner buzzed with hushed conversations. Her heart tightened. They were discussing her son. "It's not right what they did," a customer murmured. "They should lock up those bad cops." How could she stand there, a silent witness? She felt the weight of the community's expectation, they're fueled by anger over her son's beating. Yet in the chaos, a deeper fear gripped her, a fear of the hidden truth she could not reveal. For years she had lived an extraordinary double life. On one hand, she was a devoted mother, striving each day to instill values of integrity and perseverance that her own mother had imparted. On the other, she was an undercover FBI agent, fighting a war against the corruption that seeped into the very foundation of the local police department. As the backlash grew, her role in them worsened. How could she reconcile being a guardian and a seeker of justice without sacrificing everything she held dear? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Tiffany's breath quickened, nerves tensing like a coiled spring. Could she tell the truth, expose herself as more than a waitress dressed in grease-stained aprons? She felt the community's eyes on her, judging, wondering if she was complicit in the very corruption she sought to dismantle. But if she revealed her true identity, would Malik become collateral damage in her fight for justice? The confrontation spun her mind into a whirlwind, thoughts crashing against each other like waves. Betray her past or betray her son, either choice felt like an insurmountable sacrifice. The news stations were already setting up outside the diner. The cameras would capture every reaction of the townsfolk, every glimmer of doubt in her eyes. Tension built, pressing down like the humidity in the air. As she watched her son wind through the crowd, she felt an immense sense of dread looming over them. What if he was arrested again? What if the community turned against them both? Her dual life was unraveling, her truth threatened by the very injustice she worked to expose. She had to make a choice: stand firm for justice, and risk everything, or protect her son at all costs. Each second felt like an eternity. Trapped between two worlds, Tiffany stood on the edge, her spirit heavy with the responsibility of a mother. The tension in the room was suffocating, the air crackling with uncertainty. Time was slipping away, and she wondered, was the cost of justice worth the potential destruction of her family? As the chaos swirled around her, Tiffany's fate remained suspended in an agonizing moment, the realization that her next move could change everything. Tiffany's heartbeat thudded in her ears, drowning out the murmurs around her as she grappled with her impossible choice. The truth, a weapon capable of justice or destruction, lay heavy on her tongue. She could feel Malik's presence amidst the crowd, his innocence sharp against the backdrop of adults fueled by anger and confusion. Through her peripheral vision, she caught glimpses of the news crews preparing for a spectacle. Every camera had a desire for drama, for stories to twist and manipulate. But this wasn't just a story, it was her life. Her pulse quickened, a sprinting race against time. The phone call had jolted her back to the present, forcing her to confront reality. Her instincts screamed to protect Malik, the tangible, palpable priority. She took a deep breath, thinking about the lessons she had instilled in him: honor, courage, resilience. Those principles had to survive, no matter the storm raging outside. She could visualize Malik tightening his fists, bravely standing up against Officer Johnson. And yet the truth of who she was wrapped tightly around her, fighting against the need for self-preservation. Could she not be both? Why must she always choose between motherhood and duty? A realization hit her like a shot of adrenaline. In this moment, perhaps she could reclaim both roles. Summoning her courage, Tiffany stepped out from behind the counter, her resolve hardening. It was now or never. Everyone. Her voice, although steady, carried the weight of her urgency. What happened to my son isn't just about anger. This is about justice that should be served, but justice doesn't thrive in chaos. The diner fell eerily quiet, faces turning toward her. Yes, I'm angry. You're angry. But we have to be smart about how we address this. She locked eyes with a few familiar faces, each expressing a tense understanding. Could they see her for who she really was? The undercover agent, tirelessly working against the very entities that had decided to harm an innocent boy. But as she took that step forward, she also saw their anger morph into apprehension. Would they believe her? Tiffany straightened, pushing down her doubts. I need your help. My son deserves better, and all of us do. We have to find the strength to demand answers and protect our community, without succumbing to fear or violence. A brave soul in the back shouted, "What does the FBI say? Are they even going to help?" That question echoed painfully in her ears. It was a valid concern, but she couldn't risk leading them to the truth about her role. They need us to stand together, she asserted, boiling determination rising. I will fight for Malik. But I can't do it alone. We must unite for something greater than all of us. Static crackled in the air as her words resonated. For the first time in what felt like ages, Tiffany sensed a flicker of hope within herself. Perhaps it was possible to blend her passion for justice with her instinctual need to shield her son. She was standing there, poised on the fragile line of transparency and secrecy. Crucially, the stakes were rising. She needed to gather more than just the outside community. She needed to unite those like herself who were invested in change, both for personal and professional liberation. But as she spoke, Tiffany couldn't shake the dread that crept into the back of her mind. What if revealing a glimpse of her true self sparked a chain reaction, leading the very people she confided in to unravel the secrets she fought so hard to keep? With the tension lurking, Tiffany knew that whatever path she chose next held immeasurable consequences. But one thought consumed her: was she willing to risk it all for not just her son, but for everyone who deserved justice? Clarity surged. There was only one way forward, and she had to take that leap. The moment hung delicately on the edge of decision. Just then, a sudden commotion erupted outside the diner. Cars screeched, and the deep rumble of sirens grew louder, creeping closer. Tiffany's heart dropped, the realization dawning something was about to change. But would it be for better or worse? As the door burst open, she braced herself for the unknown. The door swung wide, and an imposing figure rushed in, the atmosphere shifting dramatically. Tiffany recognized the uniform immediately. Officers poured into the diner, their authoritative presence roiling through the crowd. Instinctively, her body tensed. She had spent too long compartmentalizing her life, and now the walls between those compartments threatened to shatter. Everyone, stay calm! An officer barked, scanning the room and dismissing the patron's startled faces with a steely, hardened gaze. Tiffany's grip tightened on the counter. The world outside was spiraling toward chaos, unpredictability lacing the very air she breathed. She could see Malik's wide eyes locking onto hers with a mix of fear and confusion, and her chest tightened. She needed to convey strength, a solid foundation amidst this turbulent storm. While the officers moved through the diner, Tiffany felt an overwhelming urge to shield her son from their eyes, to remove him from this escalating tension, yet tethered, more than ever, to the potent truths she had embraced moments ago. Ma'am, one of the officers approached her, a formidable presence. We're here to assess the situation. People were reporting possible disturbances linked to your son's incident. Tiffany's mind raced. Here was the first opportunity to assert herself. I'm aware of that. But I need to know, are you just here to control the crowd or actually to support us? Because my son's life deserves more than reactionary tactics. The officer blinked, taken aback by her assertiveness. For a fleeting moment, doubt flickered in his eyes. We're here to ensure public safety. Public safety doesn't start with intimidation, officer, she replied, her voice steady, yet surfacing an enriching resolve as she shifted from helplessness into authority. It starts with communication, with listening. Tiffany took a step forward. The line she walked felt treacherous but necessary. She could not retreat. Around her, patrons began nodding, inching closer, fueled by her emerging conviction. They saw not just a neighborhood mother, but a voice, someone willing to confront the oppressive narrative that was woven into the fabric of their community. Something inside her began to vibrate with an energy she had never fully harnessed before. She pressed on. My son deserves answers, Justice. But we must operate thoughtfully, together. Are you prepared to take that step? Can we be allies in this? Another officer stepped in, flanking the first, a glimmer of perplexed recognition crossing his face. Tiffany wondered if he too sensed the shift, or simply felt threatened by the force of her unwavering determination. As tension swelled, she was stirred by something deep within, a discovery awakening. She realized she was not merely a victim. She was an agent of change. Her personal experience was powerful fuel. At that moment, abandoning the features of her dual existence felt clearer than ever. She could be protective, fierce, and unyielding. It was time to forge an unorthodox path, yet, a jagged splinter of anxiety pierced through her consciousness. What if by standing up now, the revelation of her truth came crashing down around her? Her undercover work hadn't just colored her career. It defined her in a realm of hidden dangers. How long could she manage both identities without becoming a casualty of her own reality? In the throes of fear, clarity surged back. She was not just a mother or an agent. She was Tiffany. This moment would carve her into a leader, if only she dared to embrace it. There was no turning back. As voices around her rose, asserting their demands and frustrations, the realization that she was poised at a crucial crossroads gripped her once more. Her decisions now had the power to not only embolden her but to reshape the perception of her community as they grappled against external forces threatening not just Malik, but all of them. Abruptly, a loud crash jolted the diner's foundation, drowning her thoughts. Tiffany's heartbeat quickened. What now loomed on the periphery of her consciousness? The door had swung open again. But this time, figures invaded the establishment, reminiscent of a nightmare made real. She had to decide in an instant: fight or retreat, expose or conceal. The stakes had never felt so intensely personal, and she could already see the shadows of destruction being cast across the lives she cared deeply for. And in that moment, Tiffany understood the weight of who she needed to become. Navigating this reality would demand courage beyond anything she had previously known. Would she surrender to her fears or seize this critical moment to embrace her potential? The sirens outside echoed through the diner, a teetering crescendo punctuating a coming storm. The next move was hers, and while the cost had never felt so uncertain, she refused to allow this to be the end of her fight. Before she could fully register the intrusion, chaos erupted. The second group burst in like the winds of a storm, uniformed in their riot gear, helmets gleaming ominously under the diner's fluorescent lights. Tiffany's stomach churned. The stakes had just escalated. Her intuition screamed that she needed to act decisively. Her dual identity felt like a burden, yet it had never been more essential than it was now. As the officers established a perimeter, directing harried patrons to the corners, Tiffany's initial resolve began to shift towards a more calculated strategy. It was time to leverage everything she had: her instincts, her knowledge from the streets, and the truth of her hidden life as an agent. While others flinched at the sight of force, she experienced a small flicker of empowerment. Her dual roles could intersect to provide clarity and strength in the turmoil. Malik, stay close to me. I'll protect you, she whispered urgently, her son's eyes wide with confusion and fear. This wasn't just any altercation. It was her chance to connect her past experiences with her present reality. She couldn't let the layers of fear cloud her unique skill set. Every ounce of training she'd undergone rushed forth with a newfound purpose. One of the officers stepped up, his face obscured behind the shield but his voice distinct. "Ma'am. Step back, this isn't safe." Safe? The word ignited a fire within her. What does safety mean when we're treated like we're under siege? You're here as a response to fear, not to prevent it. The officer hesitated, perhaps recognizing the strength in her voice, and for a moment, Tiffany's line of sight shifted around the diner. The other patrons were increasingly drawing into her orbit, feeding off her defiance. She could tell they were caught between disbelief and an urgent desire for action. Beneath the clash of voices, she seized the moment and began to articulate the silent knowing that had stretched through her entire life. Underneath these police uniforms are human beings, just like us. My son, my community, we exist beyond your perceptions and niceties. Each word was laced with emotion, her vulnerability becoming her strength as she connected with everyone, chiefly Malik, but the others too. My truth, my strength is rooted in both these worlds. If we don't start forming connections, we spiral into deeper chaos. The first officer's eyes narrowed, his stance taut. We can still do our job without you undermining authority. Authority isn't just about power, it's about trust. And right now, your presence incites fear instead of restoring it, Tiffany countered, a cold determination settling in her bones. She felt the pulse of her undercover reality blending with her present, asserting itself dynamically within her. What if the skills she honed as an agent could forge paths for others to see her authentic self? What can we do to build that trust? She pressed, almost desperate. She wasn't just fighting for her son anymore. This was about a collective consciousness simmering to the surface. A tense silence followed, punctured only by the erratic whirring of sirens as the flashing lights bathed the diner in an ominous glow. Then, in a surprising display of vulnerability, the initial officer lowered his shield slightly, revealing a hint of empathy. Maybe we can listen to each other," he replied tentatively, the cracks in his facade allowing the tiniest glimmer of understanding. Tiffany seized the moment. Could this be the beginning of something transformative? But just then, her phone buzzed violently in her pocket, a stark reminder of the dual existence she had labored to maintain. She felt a wave of dread wash over her as she pulled out the device, glancing at an unknown number flashing on the screen. The possibility of exposure gnawed at her. "Mom, who is it?" Malik's voice broke through her mounting anxiety, innocent yet probing. "I don't know," she admitted carefully, her pulse thrumming erratically. She faced a choice steeped in urgency. Each moment woven into the unfolding crisis prodded her in conflicting directions, one to protect her son at all costs, the other to confront her hidden reality. The stakes had never felt so stark. Would she answer the call and expose herself to old dangers or prioritize her son's safety above all else? Each option seemed fraught with peril. With heavy breaths, she analyzed her situation, the unknown resonating ominously like a ticking clock, pushing her further toward a decision with implications that could reshape everything. The diner's atmosphere remained thick as tension warped decisions around her, and she needed to act before the window of opportunity vanished. Would she answer the call or set it aside for the moment? In that pivotal split second, Tiffany knew one truth: indecision could be just as dangerous as any threat standing in front of her. Tiffany's heart raced, the vibrating phone feeling like a detonator strapped to her wrist. Each ring echoed the conflict coursing through her mind, amplifying the gravity of her choices. She could feel the weight of the world colliding within her, a mother's instinct battling the remnants of her secret life. "Mom," Malik whispered again, his eyes darting between her and the growing tension at the diner's entrance. He was scared, and she could see that her struggle was mirrored in his expression. "What are you going to do?" The flickering lights from outside cast shadows that danced across the table, encapsulating the clashing world she straddled. She felt more than a dozen eyes on her, families torn between panic and curiosity, all seeking a thread of hope in the chaos. "I need you to trust me," she said, swallowing hard but grounding her voice in resolve. "No matter what, I will protect you." Her son nodded, albeit hesitantly, and that connection infused her with a much-needed surge of determination, With trembling fingers, she silenced the phone and regarded the police officer who had softened slightly. "We're not your enemies," she asserted, her gaze steady. "We're all in this together. You might not see it now, but listening can be the first step to understanding." As her words lanced through the crowd, she could sense a shift. The officers began to glance at one another, uncertain but intrigued by her proposition. She knew this was the moment to harness her training to weave her experience into a narrative that could reframe the situation. Taking a breath, Tiffany recalibrated her approach, its urgency enabling her vulnerability to surface without shame. "Let us start with our fears. Each of you, step down your shields for just a moment. Recognize the fear behind the uniforms, and I'll share mine, the fear of losing my son, the fear of revealing the truth I've hidden from him." The air thickened, the tension palpable as she spoke. Murmurs filled the diner, threads of her community coiling around her words. Her voice quivered but remained steady, a testament to the urgency she could mold into collective strength. "But we can't fix what divides us if we don't see each other as human first." Before anyone could respond, her phone vibrated against the tabletop, a new reminder of her hidden life and imminent choices looming. With a quick decision, she flipped it over, shielding the glaring screen from prying eyes, unwilling to risk another layer of exposure. There was too much to lose. Just then, Malik's tiny hand gripped hers. "Mom, are we safe?" His innocence stoked her protective fire. Instinctively, she squeezed his hand tighter, steeling her resolve while her heart sank further into a tumult of conflicting priorities. "Safe doesn't always mean secure," she said softly, gazing into her son's wide eyes. "But it means choosing to face the storm together instead of hiding from it. I need to confront this phone call. If it's connected to who I am, then I must embrace it rather than shy away." Tiffany stepped away from Malik, her gut tying itself in knots as she moved closer to the perimeter of uniforms and shields. Her mind raced with the implications of her next steps. She would place her trust in the possibility of understanding, but first, she needed to uncover the message that awaited her. As she took a deep breath, preparing to answer, her determination hardened. Would this be the moment where two lives would collide, forcing her to confront who she really was? With one finger hovering above the screen, she hesitated just long enough to feel the weight of everything pressing against her. The prospect of revealing herself both to her son and to the officers lay before her like a precipice. In that fleeting moment, Tiffany realized the urgency. The call might not just threaten her dual life but open a door to everything she had worked to protect. This decision could change everything. With newfound resolve, she pressed accept, ready to face whatever awaited her on the other end, hoping it would unravel truths she feared yet desperately needed to confront. Tiffany felt a jolt of energy surge through her as the call connected, the silence between her and the unseen caller laden with anticipation. The diner faded into obscurity, the overwhelming weight of everything she had concealed from her son and her community pressing down hard. She could hear the soft hum of static on the other end, but before the voice came through, her mind spiraled through 1,000 possibilities, each one darker than the last. "Hello? Tiffany? Is that you?" The voice was calm but urgent, pulling her back into reality. It was a voice she recognized. "It's me," she replied, her voice barely a whisper, as if speaking her truth aloud might unravel the delicate balance she had maintained all these years. "We don't have much time. You need to act fast. Things are escalating at the warehouse, and we can't maintain cover without your cooperation," the agent instructed, maintaining a tone that urged her compliance. Tiffany's heart raced. This call, she realized, had far-reaching implications beyond just her hidden identity. It tied together the lives she was trying to protect. The weight of the call pressed at her chest, forcing her to consider not only the ramifications of her actions but also her own moral compass. She glanced at Malik, his innocent eyes wide with uncertainty, and felt a pang of guilt. Could she put her son at risk for the sake of this mission? But the truth was, returning to her old life wasn't an option. She had ventured too far into the shadows, and for once, Tiffany understood the cost of exposure for both of them. "What do you need me to do?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. "Listen closely," the agent continued. We have a mole in the department leaking information about your operation. You need to identify him before it's too late. You can't trust anyone, not even those close to you." Each word felt like a punch to the gut. Her instincts screamed at her. Not only did she need to protect her identity and her son, but now she had to navigate a treacherous world of betrayal and deceit inside the very institution meant to safeguard them. The stakes had never felt higher. "How am I supposed to do that?" she questioned, desperation creeping into her tone. "Use your connections. Go back to the local precinct and engage with the officers. Find someone willing to talk or someone who seems out of sorts. Trust your gut," he instructed, his voice becoming distant, already preparing for the next step without her. His urgency mingling with her growing anxiety. Tiffany wanted to scream against the mounting tension. To what end? She could almost hear the ticking clock behind his words, and the sense of her old life crashing into her present was suffocating. "To protect Malik, to protect us all," he answered, as if sensing her internal struggle. "You harnessed your fear at the diner. Channel that vulnerability. Let it guide you. You know how to play this game. Remember, the best intel often comes from the unlikeliest sources." His words struck a chord. Tiffany hesitated, inner walls crumbling as she felt the gravitational pull of her past self, that agent who had fought to make a difference in a world that often turned its back on the people she cared about. The idea that she could become a duality once again, walking the line between roles, both mother and agent, ignited a flame of purpose. But uncertainty gnawed at her. What if stepping back into that role meant risking her son's life? She had fought to distance herself from that world for his sake. "Give me a moment," she said, reluctantly severing the connection. The weight of the decision crystallized into clarity. She had to balance her old life with her new reality. With stern resolve, she turned back to Malik, feeling different somehow. The tightness in her chest released a fraction as she prepared to act, ready to reclaim her life and protect what mattered most. "Mom?" Malik asked hesitantly. "We'll get through this," she promised with fierce conviction, as fear transformed into an unbreakable bond. But as she absorbed Malik's hopeful gaze, another wave of anxiety crashed over her. Could she navigate this treacherous path without losing everything? In that moment, she realized one unsettling truth: the shadows of her past were moving closer, and soon, she would have to confront them head-on. A haunting thought gripped her as she stepped deeper into the unfolding chaos. Who could she truly trust, and when would it become too late to turn back? Tiffany stood up abruptly, the weight of her decision mingling with a rising urgency. The diner felt suffocating, the clatter of dishes and chatter blending into a dull roar that suddenly exacerbated her anxiety. She scanned the room as though looking for clarity within the chaos. Could she really immerse herself back into the fray? Re-engaging with the precinct would not only mean leaning on old connections but also reopening wounds long buried beneath layers of routine life and motherhood. Her thoughts were disjointed as she made her way to the door, but one thing was clear: this wasn't merely about intelligence gathering anymore. It was about survival. Theirs. Arriving outside, crisp air filled her lungs, its sharpness cutting through the fog of fear hovering in her mind. She felt a rush of adrenaline, a primal instinct igniting within her. The drive back home was mechanical, each turn taken on autopilot, while her mind flitted between possibilities. Immediately, her thoughts drifted to Officer Daniels, a former colleague who had always had her back. He had taken pride in his work and was often hesitant to play into the undercurrents of the precinct's darker dealings. Perhaps he might know something. The longer she considered it, the more she felt they could share a mutual trust. He wouldn't betray her. Or would he? Arriving home, Tiffany paused at the threshold, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. She carved out a mental space in her mind, a sanctuary where Malik's laughter and innocence could reside untainted by the volatility of her choices. Setting that intention had always been her guiding light. Now it felt like her only tether in this spiraling chaos. "Mom?" Malik poked his head out from the living room, eyes twinkling with innate trust. "Hey, buddy, can we do a little work tonight?" she asked, forcing a smile while internally battling a flood of trepidation. His nod brought a bittersweet pang to her heart. She was his hero. Together they settled at the kitchen table, Malik coloring with fervor, immersed in his imaginative world, while Tiffany's mind raced in a different direction entirely. She shuffled through old contacts on her phone, each name conjuring memories some were allies, others reminders of the thin line she walked in her past life. Drawing a shaky breath, she dialed Officer Daniels' number. His voice, familiar yet laced with uncertainty, answered. "Tiffany? I didn't expect to hear from you. Daniels, I need to talk. Can we meet?" Her tone was firm, forcing gravity into her words, careful not to let any threads of doubt thread through. "Is it urgent?" he asked, skepticism creeping into his voice. "More urgent than you could imagine," she forced out, as trepidation began to clamp down on her resolve. What if he didn't believe her? What if he was one of them now? She needed to persuade him. "All right, where?" In that moment, the clock began to tick more loudly in her mind, a countdown to potential revelations and dread. "Meet me at the old cafe on 5th, an hour from now." Hanging up, Tiffany's breath came out in a rush. The first round of her mission was set, but the gnawing fear of betrayal was overshadowed by an ember of hope. She had ignited the first spark, but would it light a fire that safeguarded Malik or one that consumed them both? As she watched Malik jump off the chair and move around joyfully, suddenly uncertain of every decision she was about to make, one question loomed larger than the rest. How far was she willing to go into her past for the sake of her son's future? Determined, she picked up her coffee, eyes narrowing with fierce resolve. The shadows of her past were closing in, but now she was ready to face them. Little did she know, the investigation had only just begun, uncovering layers of deceit that stretched deeper than she anticipated, a revelation that would place not only Malik's safety, but also her very identity at risk. With every hour that passed, she understood that she was one step closer to confronting not just a mole in the department, but the very demons of her past that had left her scarred. Yet with each heartbeat, the question echoed relentlessly: who was the real adversary in this unfolding game of shadows? The cafe on 5th Street was dimly lit, its walls dotted with faded photographs capturing the ghosts of laughter and conversation long gone. Tiffany perched at a corner table, her back against the wall, a strategic position that allowed her to scan the room for any sign of danger. As she waited, the coffee in front of her cooled, the steam fading into the tense air around her. What was she really doing here? Each tick of the clock reminded her of the escalating stakes. She felt like an outsider in her own life, caught in an emotional crossfire between the mother she had crafted for Malik and the agent she once was. When Officer Daniels finally strolled through the door, his familiar face felt like a harbinger of conflicting memories. Their eyes met, and in that instant, a silent acknowledgement passed between them, the unspoken shared history, and that she had stepped away from the life of grit and chaos. But could she step back into it without losing herself? "Tiffany." He approached cautiously, taking a seat across from her, his brows furrowing slightly. "What's this about?" Tiffany fidgeted with the cup, a surge of doubt swelling within her. Could he still trust her? "I think there's something brewing in the precinct. Something dangerous. I need to know the truth." His gaze sharpened. "What kind of truth?" "About the ongoing corruption. I have a feeling someone inside is acting out, using information for personal benefit. And that could endanger Malik and others." She hesitated, the weight of her words pressing heavily against her resolve. "I think it might tie back to some old friends." Daniel studied her, skepticism and concern etched on his face. "You've been out of the game a while. What makes you think you can navigate these waters again?" Her heart raced. The sting of his words hit harder than she anticipated. "Because I have something to protect. Something worth fighting for." The fierceness in her voice surprised even her. She wasn't just a mother. She was a woman driven by a need to shield her son from shadows creeping too close. Daniels leaned in, a mixture of concern and curiosity softening his expression. "What do you want me to do?" "I need your help. You're still close to the action. If we can work together, we might uncover who's pulling the strings." A silence stretched between them, fraught with the weight of past camaraderie and potential mistrust. "Tiffany, you know the risks of digging into this. Then why did you join law enforcement if not to seek the truth?" The defiance coursing through her was empowering. She could almost sense a shift in the air. Was she finally rekindling her former self? Because it's a hell of a lot easier to keep your head down, to not rock the boat. But I can't just stand by when I know something isn't right. I know you're still that Officer Daniels, she asserted, her eyes unwavering, the one who cared enough to ask the right questions. He sighs, running a hand over his stubbled jaw. All right. Let us find out what's happening. But we need to be smart. This isn't just a game. The adrenaline surged. Tiffany was stepping onto a battlefield she thought she had escaped. Without risking Malik, she reminded both him and herself, her voice steadying, indicating her intent to be calculated. Then let us start tonight. I have contacts, people within the department who could help us. The spark of connection reignited a fierce determination within her. This was no longer merely about her safety, or the safety of her son. It involved dismantling a web of betrayal that could threaten lives far beyond their own. As they left the cafe, her pulse quickened in anticipation. For the first time in years, Tiffany felt her old sense of purpose awakening, pushing aside the remnants of motherly fear. With Daniels at her side, she felt untapped reserves of courage surfacing, yet with each step they took deeper into the precinct's murky waters, she sensed a storm brewing within her. What would they uncover? And more critically, were her past demons truly behind her, or lurking just beyond the periphery, waiting for the right moment to pounce? This new chapter of her life had just begun, and already, she could hear the call of intrigue and danger whispering in response. Would she have the strength to confront the darkness ahead, or would it consume her once and for all? Tiffany's mind was a flurry of calculations as she and Daniels navigated the alley behind the precinct, shrouded in shadows. It was unnatural, the quiet, the tension of the night settling upon her like a heavy cloak. As they approached the car he had parked discreetly, her thoughts spiraled toward her son and the life she dedicated herself to nurturing. Each moment spent away from him gnawed at her, a relentless reminder of her dual roles as both protector and pursuer of truth. What's the plan? Daniels broke the silence, his tone both practical and cautious. First, we need to establish trust with your contacts. If they think I'm suspect or out of the loop, we won't gain any ground. There was a steely resolve in her voice that surprised her again. Involuntarily, she drew on past experiences, recalling her training, a mental reservoir she realized had never truly evaporated. Right, he nodded, glancing around, ever the vigilant officer. The precinct has been buzzing with unusual activities, but nobody's daring enough to speak out. I have a former colleague, Lisa, working internal affairs. She might have insights. The name ignited something in her. Lisa. They'd been part of the same circle years ago, but Tiffany had distanced herself, spiraling away from that world. A rush of nostalgia collided with her current urgency. Could she rely on someone whom she had left behind? Okay, let us meet her, Tiffany said, attempting to suppress the doubt creeping up her spine. But we need to make sure it's discreet. The car's interior smelled of leather and faded cologne, reminders of a life left untouched. Daniels drove through the dim streets, their conversation morphing into strategy. Yet Tiffany's internal conflict simmered. Each word exchanged reminded her of the safe distance she had created between herself and the chaotic unpredictability of the past. Now, she was hurtling back into it, entangled with the very network she had walked away from. As they arrived at a quiet diner where Lisa worked late shifts, Tiffany's stomach churned with unease. She debated the choice: was it truly necessary to confront those old connections? Could she risk the potential repercussions of rekindling past relationships? Or was this an opportunity to harness old alliances for a new purpose? Stay focused, she whispered to herself as they walked inside, the warmth enveloping them but not diluting the chill in her bones. The bright overhead lights felt glaring, illuminating memories buried beneath layers of resilience. Within moments they spotted Lisa. Her demeanor was the same, lively and sharp, yet a hint of weariness lingered in her eyes. As they approached, Tiffany felt a flood of nostalgia, tempered by the cautious, deliberate steps she had taken since leaving the chaos behind. Lisa, Daniels greeted her, and Tiffany followed suit, summoning a smile layered with authentic intent. We need to talk. The initial pleasantries gave way to urgency. Tiffany felt a connection forming not just to Lisa, but a reconnection with the part of herself that thrived in instinct and action, that hadn't slipped away entirely. Rumors about internal corruption are swirling, and we believe someone's using their influence irresponsibly, Daniels explained, sharing notes and observations. Tiffany listened intently, but it was Lisa's steady gaze that anchored her. The recognition sparked an instinct within. This was not just a reunion but potentially the rebirth of a cause. You should know, Tiffany, Lisa said slowly, carefully weighing her words, there are whispers, deadlier than you might think. There are people who won't hesitate to silence any threats, especially from someone coming back now. The implication hung thick in the air. Tiffany felt adrenaline pulse through her veins. She had anticipated risks, but this claim struck at her very core. The darkness she had sensed was closer than she wanted to admit. Then we'll need to gather proof, she asserted, determination cresting within her. We'll need to tread carefully, Lisa cautioned, but her eyes swirled with understanding. In that moment, she realized this wasn't just about Malik or her past. This was about making the strongest version of herself rise again, but it would require vulnerability and the exploration of uncomfortable truths. As they laid out the groundwork, Tiffany felt a transformation unfurling inside her, a melding of past experiences with a fervent commitment to the present. The pieces of her identity were not just colliding, they were weaving into an intricate pattern of resilience. But beneath the surface of newfound empowerment, a disquiet loomed larger, a storm gathering intensity. How deep did the rot go? And could she handle the truth if it threatened to unravel everything she'd struggled to build? Determined to unearth the buried secrets, Tiffany steeled herself for the confrontation ahead. She needed clarity, but unbeknownst to her, her past was waiting, lurking, hungry for a chance to reclaim what was once lost. The next steps would demand courage beyond her current limits, pushing her to confront not just her adversaries, but the fears within. Would she stand firm against the rising tide, or would the very foundations of her resolve shatter under the weight of the truth? The following day dawned with a clarity that cast aside the shadows looming around Tiffany. As she stood in her kitchen, the sunlight streaming through the window, she reflected on the treacherous path ahead. There was no denying her fear, still, there was a fierce determination burning within her. Her dual identities, the dedicated mother and the determined undercover agent, were no longer separate but rather converging into a single force. Malik's laughter echoed from the other room, grounding her in purpose. Protecting him would mean more than shielding him from the dangers of the world. It would require her to confront her own tumultuous past and rise as a leader. The tension in the precinct was palpable, and with her resolve solidifying, Tiffany was prepared to penetrate the web of deceit she felt had infiltrated the police force. She had spent too long sidestepping her responsibilities as an agent and mother, and it was time to reclaim both roles. With clarity flowing through her veins, she summoned her courage, knowing the stakes had never been higher. As she arrived at the precinct later that day, Tiffany's heart raced. Each footstep resonated with purpose, and she gripped the outer door handle as if bracing herself for the unknown. Inside, officers moved about with their usual cadence, but today she perceived the currents of distrust and discontent swirling beneath their polished exteriors. She needed to act swiftly. Tiffany approached Officer Daniels with unwavering determination. "We need to gather intel, but we have to remain invisible," she declared, her tone infused with urgency. This was no longer just her mission, it was their collective fight. Daniels nodded, respect emanating from his gaze. "I'll reach out to Lisa and those in internal affairs. But we have to proceed carefully, we can't let this turn into a siege." They plotted an unassuming approach, determining to interact with fellow officers openly while discreetly asking the right questions. The teamwork between them felt electric, sparking a sense of unity that invigorated her spirit. For the first time in years, she believed they could orchestrate change from within. As the day wore on, Tiffany encountered old colleagues. Their excitement filled the air, but she could sense the betrayal lurking just beneath the surface. She remained vigilant, honing in on subtle shifts in demeanor and exposed tensions. That evening, as she returned home, Malik leapt into her arms, enveloping her in warmth and innocence. In that moment, the world outside melted away, and her identity, as his mother, reignited a fresh sense of purpose. She promised herself that no harm would come to him. With renewed determination, Tiffany convened a small gathering of trusted officers, including Daniels and Lisa, after hours at a nearby cafe. As they huddled at a corner booth, she articulated her gut instincts, identifying the vague threats circulating and how they connected back to her undercover mission. She felt the energy shift in the room, sensing confidence and unity form with each word she uttered. "Listen, we need allies," Tiffany announced, her voice understated yet commanding. "We're all here because we care. It's time we stand against this tide together." Her sincerity resonated, and she watched as they exchanged nods of understanding, their collective resolve solidifying. As they strategized, Tiffany discovered a newfound ability to lead, guiding dialogues and shaping decisions with an authority born out of authentic vulnerability. She was uncovering not just a plan for their mission, but rekindling once dormant aspects of herself driven by fierce loyalty and a desire for justice. With every passing day, she evolved, strengthening her stance, cultivating her instincts, and earning the respect of those around her. They began to piece together until, and soon a pattern emerged, aligning with the whispers of corruption Tiffany had always sensed. It was as if the truth unveiled itself incrementally, paving the way for real change. Then came the moment of revelation. An internal report, leaked from the precinct, implicating an officer deep within the ranks. Shockwaves rippled through their small group as they realized the intertwined nature of betrayal. This was far bigger than they suspected. "Whoever it is, they're using our apprehensions against us," Daniels warned, his brow furrowed with concern. But Tiffany felt an unyielding spark ignite. "We can't crack under pressure. We stay focused." Days turned into weeks, but as Tiffany continued to connect the dots, she felt the weight of those shadows dissipate. Malik smiled at her with unwavering faith, fueling her purpose daily. She had confronted the darkness, and now she felt liberated, transformed with every challenge faced. Through targeted collaboration with Daniels, Lisa, and a few trusted officers, Tiffany not only uncovered the mole but also galvanized a movement advocating for accountability within the police force. This was no longer just personal, it had taken on a life beyond individual ambition. She was positioning herself not merely as a mother or agent but as a change-maker, a catalyst capable of transforming the tides of injustice. On the day of the confrontation, Tiffany stood resolute, her heart pounding more from the exhilaration of finally stepping into the arena than from doubt. The atmosphere thickened with anticipation, and as they presented their findings to her superiors, she felt the culmination of her agonizing journey solidify. "Yes, I am a mother. But I am also a protector of integrity," she asserted, her voice steady as she disclosed the truth. "Together, we must hold ourselves accountable to the ideals of justice." In that moment, Tiffany realized she had conquered her greatest fears. She was no longer trapped within the confines of duality. She had emerged as a force for change, seamlessly integrating her identities into a singular mission of truth. The respect heaped upon her from colleagues, allies, and most importantly, her son, culminated in a profound achievement. Not only had she fought to protect her son, but she had also paved the way for real systemic change. The warm glow of dusk settled on her as she walked home, Malik bounding beside her, giggling at some joke only they shared. There was a different air about Tiffany, an unshakable confidence that rippled through her very being. The fight for justice was continuous, but she was now armed with the strength of purpose, clarity of intent, and an unyielding commitment to forge a future filled with integrity. "Mom, you were amazing!" Malik exclaimed, pride shining in his eyes. Tiffany smiled, a feeling of fulfillment washing over her. No longer disabled by fear or obligation, she embraced her profound transformation, knowing she now had the strength to navigate every challenge life threw at her, and would always rise to the occasion. For she had achieved not just success in her mission but the remarkable growth that would forever guide her path as a mother and protector. And as she looked at Malik, she felt a sense of composure, knowing that they could now face whatever storm the world had in store, side by side. Time to call upon everyone who felt inspired by her journey and was yearning for stories rich in personal triumph. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and amplify these narratives. Comment below with your reactions and theories about the ending. Your voice matters. And remember to share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.